Hi, my name is Joan Mazer. I'm the Deputy Director and Professor at the Southeast Center for Ag Health and Injury Prevention at the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food, and Environment. The tools of the trade that I'm going to present today for agricultural safety and health and injury prevention is our 3D immersive video game called Hazard Ridge. Some background for the need for the game and for interventions generally with this age group is that youth age 15 to 19 are at high risk for farm injury and fatality. In Kentucky, at the time we developed the game, those numbers were actually 3 times the national average. Of the 1.12 million children and adolescents under 20 years of age who reside on farms, about 590,000 perform farm-related tasks, and an additional 300 plus thousand children and adolescents were hired to work on farms. Over 23,000 children and adolescents were injured on farms, and 5,800 of those injuries were due to farm work. Those were 2016 statistics. ATVs are popular as farm equipment for both work and recreational purposes in rural areas. When taken with horseback riding, ATV deaths, and added to tractor overturns, runovers, and roadway collisions, deaths from occupational agriculture-related deaths sum to substantially more than 5% of all industries across all occupations annual total of deaths. So this is a really difficult problem, and our programs have at our center have focused in large part on the next generation of farmers. And so we've developed a series of interventions for use in high school agricultural education classes, but also in other academic classes, not just agricultural education. On the small ridge I live on in Kentucky, many kids get off that school bus and get right on a tractor, and not all of them are in ag education classes. So our Economics of Prevention program was a research and development project funded by NIOSH and conducted at the Southeast Center, specifically for integration, not only into agricultural education classes, but also into high school economics classes, where there is really a lack of community-based, relevant curriculum materials for kids that live in rural areas and may live and work on farms. The EOP program, highlighted here on this website, gives information about the work that we did on the Economics of Prevention program, and it was funded in 2 5-year cycles at our center. And so there was a good deal of safety materials that were developed as part of this project. And today we're going to be focusing on the Hazard Ridge game that was developed from the story simulations and cost tools from the Economics of Prevention project. A series of educational story-based simulations were developed that focused on roadway collisions, tractor overturns, hearing loss, and ATV injuries on farms for high injury categories. The story simulations are formats that are very realistic, high fidelity simulations that depict a mix of case-based and rate-based stories. So they have actual real-world stories that incorporate some of the poor decisions we know from rate-based and statistical information on how these fatalities or injuries have occurred. These are available for download and using the simulations and answer keys. And our talk today, our tools are going to focus on Brad's Last Ride, which is an ATV story simulation. Each story event shows the decisions leading up to an injury event, but an Excel-based cost tool developed by Mel Myers, and the story simulations were developed by Dr. Henry Cole. showed actual cost of an event injury after an injury event, the consequences and costs, both personal and social. Farm injuries cost us all. If someone loses work time, if a teenager who is paralyzed for life is taken out of the workforce, that productivity and that contribution of that individual is lost, and it's a social cost. And so our program wanted to help people understand that even if you don't live and work on a farm, you should be concerned about safe and healthy farm practices in your community. These cost tools, where's my, um, these cost tools were developed and are available on that website. The design of these tools were based on the Haddon matrix of injury prevention, and Haddon's work focused on us understanding the pre-injury events, what leads up to an injury event, the injury event itself, and the post-injury event. And so it's in the pre-injury event space that we can prevent an injury. But if the injury is not prevented and there is an injury event, the post-injury event is the space that we calculate and understand all the consequential costs of that injury, both personally to the farm family and individuals affected, as well as to their communities. The logical extension of our story stimulations and cost tools in a second round of funding was to appropriate the latest form of interactive narrative and storytelling, which for our teenage focused population was digital gaming. So several studies have shown the knowledge gains through gaming in the area of safety knowledge, which of course is our space, and safety and injury prevention. The current world of digital natives, and Prensky was writing about that term in 2001, but it continues today to be a popular characterization of youth. They crave digital electronic devices such as tablets, smartphones, and online tools and resources. And frankly, even in our post-current COVID world, we're all Zooming and using all kinds of digital devices, but certainly youthful at-risk farm youth have been at the forefront of using these tools and resources. Digital games are engaging, but they also support some real learning and personnel skill development, such as agency and feeling in charge and control of your life and your decision-making skills. And these are key skills in making smart, safe decisions for safe farm practices. The pilot development of an immersive 3D game, for this project, we engaged local professional game designers. We're so lucky to have in the town our university is, Supersol, with whom we partnered for the development of the immersive 3D game. The decision from the design team and the game developers was to focus on one of the previously developed story simulations, Brad's Last Ride, that depicts two teens who, and you can go back and click on that story in the story simulation link in this presentation. How the story evolves, the pre-injury events were that Brad and his cousin, their fathers had promised them to go to a recreational ATV park on a Saturday. And as events evolved, the father and uncle had to go off and negotiate for some additional land that they were going to be leasing for their crops in the upcoming season. And so the ATV trip was canceled, and the kids were kind of annoyed, and they were, pent up, and the moms went off shopping, and the kids were left with some chores to do on their ATV. So not only were they frustrated by not being able to go, they were probably a little ticked off and frustrated that they then were assigned to do chores. And so they were assigned to go out to a field. They were assigned to go out and do some fence repair, take the ATVs, which they did. But even though they had helmets, they chose not to wear them. They went out to the field, repaired the fence, and then decided they'd start horsing around and roughhousing with their ATVs. So they start driving at a high rate of speed around the pasture. And as Brad is looking over his shoulder, this is an actual story that we had collected from our injury data in our state. Brad's looking over his shoulder to see where his cousin is, if he's far behind him, and he loses sight of the fact that he doesn't negotiate a turn, and he smashes into a fence. And of course, he's thrown from the ATV and he's very seriously injured. And the EMTs are called and he goes off to the hospital. And as the cost tools then pick up the post-injury event, beginning with the cost of the ambulance arriving, the EMT, the time, the cost of the initial emergency room cost, and going on through really over a 50-year life horizon, where that includes all the initial costs and injury rehab, and then his lifetime of being in a wheelchair and so forth. So this was the story that the 3D game Hazard Ridge was based on. And so part of the decision was not to depict the entire incident itself, because it's in the story simulations and tools, but to kind of extend it into a community setting where Hazard Ridge is a town where teens are dying. There's a high rate of actually insurance claims are part of this. And then Elise, who is an ag safety and health researcher who also has some insurance background, is sent to investigate what's going on in this town. And Elise arrives at Hazard Ridge in a torrential rainstorm and is directed to the courthouse. So that's the 3D space that the game plays out in, where records of the injuries and fatalities are stored. The game player in this, it's called a walking simulator game, takes the role of Elise and follows clues and directions in the 3D space to understand causes of the town's problems, these ATV injuries to teens, and the costs and social implications of these ATV injuries. Within the game, there are also, in the basement, you're sort of directed there early on. There are collection tools to record and gather as you explore through the courthouse, the records, and various clues and information. You have a computer available to you that you can collect this information and save it and write a report up, as sort of the educational element of the game. The Hazard Ridge webpage has information about the game, a short video of a 3D game environment with some highlights, and then a link to play the actual game with specific instructions for certain internet browsers. We have discovered that, and you'll see one of the browsers has some audio problems, so we kind of ask you to avoid that. So in our tools of the trade booth, and as this tool gets used in various settings, we will be providing you with some hard copy information, some of our flyers and informational materials, as well as that initial simulation and cost tools if you don't want to navigate out. But I'd like to play for you here some Hazard Ridge highlights so you can get a sense of the gaming environment. The records room is where your computer is for your collection tools, and these various drawers, and there are clues around the room that are highlighted and that you can click on and get information. exploring an office in the courthouse that you can arrive at. And you see this little hand is one of the clues, you know, the indicators that a clue is nearby, and you can access it in that way. So here you see that someone's discovered a key, and they're going around to find these various elements. And if you're really good at navigating a 3D space, you actually could be moving around it this quickly. So if you click on this link, you can begin your actual gameplay. And just for limitations of video space and so forth, please copy and paste this into your browser. We recommend that you use Chrome and that you do not use Safari, because that is the one that has the audio issues that have been reported to us by some game with some user feedback. So play on and let us know how you like the game. You can provide feedback at jmazer@uky.edu. Thank you.